to you all. Before I go into the exchange that I had with the Prime Ministers this morning, I would like to sincerely welcome the Nobel Peace Prize being given to Narges Mohammadi, women's rights activist and human rights defender. I think it's a very important message and one that we definitely welcome. So yesterday we had a very good meeting of the European political community, a format of EU candidates and European partners that I believe is very useful, especially as we are experiencing war on our continent and our collective security is increasingly under threat. But to be clear at the outset, the EPC cannot become a substitute for enlargement, because enlargement is and remains the European Union's strongest geopolitical tool. It is an investment in peace and security and democracy and, importantly, prosperity, a process that benefits everyone involved, both current and new members. And if previous enlargements have shown us is that this is evidently the case. And that's why one of my main messages was to say that we must start a genuine discussion on our own EU internal reform. We need to be ready when the candidates are ready. Therefore, we must start now, because it is long overdue, and anything is clear is that what worked or works for 27 will not work for 32, 33 or 35. And I did this in order to link it also with how we reform internally, which we have to kickstart, but also looking at the immediacy of the work that we are doing until the end of the year is the revision of our long-term budget, the multi-annual financial framework. And my second point was about the fact that funds are finite. If the pandemic, the invasion of Ukraine, natural disasters and the cost of living crisis have shown us is that all have taken their toll on our budget. Rising interest rates have pushed up our next generation EU borrowing costs, and we cannot let the next generation of Europeans become responsible for repaying our debts. So I also said that our budget is stretched to the limit, to the extent that it cannot be that if a country that faces a natural disaster towards the end of the year is told that there is no money left. This is the reality that we live in today, and if we continue on this trajectory in December this year, our current funding for Ukraine will run out. And this means that we cannot simply ignore these realities. We need to act. And now, that's for the security of Ukraine, for the security and future of Europe. We spent a lot of time talking about migration. For the first time in decades, and really decades, there is a realistic possibility to find an agreement on our common rules on asylum and migration. It is within reach. To do this, we need to hold the course. We need to keep calm heads and finalise our work on the Asylum and Migration Pact. There are 5 files. All of them can now, following the agreement this week reached on the crisis regulation, can resume with the pace that I would like to see faster, but looking at a successful resolution over this pact by the end of our mandate. And the reason why I say the end of our mandate, because election after election, migration dominates our citizens' concerns. It tops our citizens' concerns. And what we cannot let is this debate dominate and polarise yet another European elections campaign. I'm not saying it won't happen, but the least we can do is that we can show on paper, on black and white, that we have addressed this issue from a legislative angle. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have time for a few questions. We start with Gabriella here. Please.
Hi.
You mentioned migration, and I wanted to ask, you say there is a realistic possibility of Hungary and Poland cannot alone block a majority deal, but they are, offering very harsh anti-immigration rhetoric today in the arrivals, talking about legal rape and, clearly outlining their position against the EU policies. So even if they can't stop it formally, what does it say about the possible implementation? And you're saying, we're going to have a deal on paper, but will it actually change anything on the ground? Thanks.
I mean, I remain optimistic. What has kept us, let's say, far behind in the past is that there was no political will to go through with such ambitious legislation with a majority. Consensus was sought year after year in an area, and this is when we talk about what we mean by veto rights, in an area where a veto cannot be used in migration policy. Now, does that mean that we do not understand individual countries? I had a conversation this morning with the Prime Minister of Poland on this, and there is, a need to recognise that national situations are different. If you talk to colleagues from the Baltic states, they talk about the hybrid threat of migrants being pushed through Belarus. That is a new front, if you will. I still regret, in a way, after having worked in this area for decades, is that we still do not realistically make distinctions between a land border and a sea border, between irregular arrivals that come by sea and irregular arrivals that come by land. And I think that if we go and we can convince, and there will be a lot of efforts for this to be made, that the 5 files can go through, which balance security at the external border with solidarity from an asylum perspective, then I think we can really start to look long-term at identifying how we deal with our neighbours. The countries that you mentioned, refer to different neighbours, how we talk to countries that are either, and help countries that are source countries or transit countries. So there is no individual solution. There's no, if I can use the term, silver bullet, but let's not kill this pact before we adopt it. I think we owe ourselves and our citizens that.
Okay. Thank you, Oliver.
Thank you. Hi. Over here. Oliver Krim with the Austrian newspaper Die Presse. You said on enlargement, what works for 27 won't work for 32, 33 or 35. Why not? And secondly, on migration, why do you want to make a distinction between land and sea borders? Well, why is that important to you? What would it solve that currently isn't being solved?
So thank you for this. So for the second part, I'll start with that. It's because when we are talking about search and rescue missions, for example, that take place, the role of Frontex, the role of the European Union Asylum Agency, how we deploy, how we process applications, etc. There is a completely different scenarios that happen, and it is that we keep facing year after year. But if we want a specific data point, it is a realization 10 years after the Lampedusa tragedy, which we commemorated this week in the European Parliament, with a realization that we have not managed, I wouldn't even say find a solution, but really address the situation where for thousands and thousands of people, for them there is no other option but to get on a boat, most often smuggled, and face, especially if you are women and children, an almost certain death. It is for that reason that I think that we need a specific a way to address the different methods of arrivals by persons who look to Europe as their home, individuals who have no other option, individuals who are persecuted and can never return, and individuals who are looking for a job. And I think that is one that would benefit listening to each and every single European member state in order to identify solutions that at least can find the broadest of consensus. 27, 32, 33. I give you 2 examples. It took us almost 6 months to decide on the date of the European elections, and quite a few months to decide on the increase of numbers of members of the European Parliament. So we will increase from 705 to 720. We talk about adapting our policies. We recognized after the pandemic that actually dealing with health at the European level worked. We are no longer a set of energy islands, but deeply interconnected because we had no choice in order to uncouple from Russia. We have been talking about a European energy union for years, and we still do not have that entrenched in our treaties. Now, we can discuss treaty reform separately, not get bogged down in whether you have a veto or remove, let's say, the unanimity rule. You can talk about numbers of commissioners, etc., but I would put that separately. I would say take stock of where it would mean something for our citizens. We recall the Conference on the Future of Europe, a whole year of debate as to where Europe can do better, and actually it has. And it has resolved. Going back to migration, you ask citizens, why is this the top of your concerns, especially for European elections? And the answer is because only Europe can solve it. And I think that's the conversation we need to have. Because when countries are ready, we cannot then say, actually, we are not. We saw that last December with a non-decision on accession of Romania and Bulgaria to Schengen area. And that, I think, is a situation where, in the long term, even when talking to our Western Balkan countries, is what they hope, or in a sense, they dread that would happen to them.
We have the gentleman there who I've asked many times. Corner.
Mateusz Chłystun from Polish Radio RMF. I would like to ask you also another question about the migration, because in the morning our Prime Minister said that he will not change his statement about the migration pact. And of course, everything depends on the election next week in Poland. But what are you going to do if the Law and Justice, this political party, will win the election? How are you going to talk to them about the migration pact? And this is the first question. Another short question about the Nagorno-Karabakh, because we've heard that this is also a big topic on that summit. What about the Nagorno-Karabakh? If this area will be still independent, or this agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan, included this country to Azerbaijan, how it looks? Thank you.
Thank you. First, of course, I will not presume to speculate on the outcome of the election next week. And I recall, a number of discussions that we've had with our Polish partners for many years, but also recently with the situation of the migrations being brought in from Belarus, for example. That is a specific situation. But I would also say that one needs to talk to another. I think what we have not done enough in the European Union is actually find broader consensus. This week was an exception. We have seen the discussion very well led by the Spanish presidency to unblock the crisis regulation, with Italy and Germany coming together to agree with making sure that their individual perspectives are met. And that is one that I think we could bring countries like Poland on board in the longer term. So I would rather say we'll see what happens at the election, and we will talk to the government, and as always have been done, in order to identify whether we could help to change the position, convince, and also understand the realities that are being faced by all individual countries. On Nagorno-Karabakh, I was asked about this question during the debate with the Prime Ministers. I confirmed that yesterday a very strongly worded resolution was adopted in the European Parliament on the situation. At the moment, we would focus on the humanitarian crisis, in other words, how to help Armenia absorb the refugees, tens of thousands who have left their lives behind within hours because they were forced to leave. But I also welcome all efforts to de-escalate, and therefore wish that we would see that de-escalation result in something a little bit more concrete than we've had so far in the future meetings with the European Council President, the French President and the German Chancellor, who have placed a lot of responsibility on themselves to speak to both Armenia and Azerbaijan. Finally, I have invited the Prime Minister of Armenia to address the plenary, and he will in Strasbourg on the 18th, so in 10 days from now.
One final question here, please.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm Emin Hussein from Objective TV, exile-based Azerbaijani.
Yes, we spoke yesterday.
Yeah. My question is, European Parliament adopted since of this year 3 resolutions. In March, a resolution on EU and Azerbaijan relationship. In September, we have resolutions which is urge situation with the political prosecution in case like Gubati Badoglu, famous scholar and anti-corruption fighters. And recently, you adopted a resolution with situation with Karabakh. And always you urge Azerbaijan government to improve situation with human rights, respect European values, but situation not improve according to our observation. And government still try to get some kind of benefits in relation with EU. They are still continue to provide sell gas and oil to EU member states. But Azerbaijani civil society and critical voices like independent media and opposition stay in the big disaster.
Question, please?
What EU should do to improve situation? Because we are your energy partner, but Azerbaijani people in reality didn't get any benefits from EU. It's 10 million population which live in the big prison.
Thank you. So we spoke, as I said yesterday, and I will repeat again. I mean, I stand by the resolutions of the European Parliament. Those are the official position, as you know. But perhaps to add is that what we have been very consistent, especially since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, is that we cannot go from one unreliable partner for energy to another. And that is a position that we keep. Okay?
Thank you very much. Thank you. This concludes the press conference. Thank you.
Well, we could do it.